Welcome to Our Stories Matter Courage on Campus. This season, we address the alarming surge of anti Semitism and radicalization on college campuses. With a 477% increase in incidents affecting Jewish students, we explore the mental health impact of polarization, challenge harmful narratives, and seek pathways to resilience.
We'll also hear from those who've left radicalized group, gaining insight into extremism and a journey toward dismantling hate. Join us as we amplify stories of growth, foster understanding, and drive change. Today we welcome Yasmine Mohammed, a human rights activist and author of the best-selling book Unveiled: How the West Empowers Radical Muslims. Raised in a fundamentalist Islamic household, Yasmine was forced into an arranged marriage to an Al-Qaeda terrorist. Determined to protect her daughter from the same fate, she made a daring escape, rebuilding her life on her own terms.
Now, through her nonprofit, Free Hearts, Free Minds, she supports free thinkers and LGBT individuals from Muslim communities worldwide. By sharing her story, she empowers others to break free and reclaim their voices.
Yasmin's story is one about survival, hope, and growth. Her vulnerability is courageous as she gives all of us hope that even from the darkest days, we can rebuild and be the light that guides others.
We are so honored to have you on our show, Yasmin.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you and Susie.
That's wonderful. So maybe we can just start by sharing a little bit about your personal story and really how it shaped your view on radicalization and life in general.
Yeah, so my story is actually really interesting because the story of my mom actually is the story of the radicalization of the entire Middle East. She was following the same trajectory, same chronological order. So basically, my mom is born and raised in Cairo, Egypt. My dad, born and raised in Gaza. And he went to university in Egypt during the time when Gaza was under the Egyptian Authority. And so he was able to go to university in Egypt, and that's where he met my mom. And the two of them were completely secular, open minded, upper class, educated people. And they got married. Their wedding, what like my mom's wearing like a mini dress, there's belly dancers, there's alcohol. They moved to San Francisco. By now it's like late 60s, early 70s. And their marriage starts to get a little strained. Eventually, they moved to Vancouver, Canada, where my brother and I were both born, and their marriage falls apart. My mom was in Vancouver at this point with three children, and my dad moved all the way to the other side of Canada to the French province of Quebec. And my mom was left in Vancouver on her own with three kids, and she started looking for a community support system. And she went to the local mosque, not because she was religious, but because she thought, maybe I'll find Arabic speaking people there. I'll find other women that I can relate to. By now, we're talking early 80s. And this is when the Islamist movement is starting to grow, the political Islam movement. So, this is a movement of anti West and pro Islam. You cannot separate the two, it's all part of the ideology. And my mom was really, really attracted to the anti-West side of things. So one of the people that started this Islamist movement in the Muslim Brotherhood, his name is Sayyid Qutb. And he tells the story of going to America and discovering that these American women are nothing but whores and this place is debauchery and blah, blah, blah. And they need Islam to fix them. They need Islam to get them to be better people. And this really resonated with my mom because this was the problem with her and my dad was he really loved the free love part of that hippie era and she didn't. And so she was not on board with that. And that's essentially how their marriage fell apart. And so she blamed the West for ruining her life, for ruining her marriage. Specifically, she blamed American women. And the pro-Islam part was kind of like on for the ride. It was like it was part and parcel of it. So she started to get into the whole pro-Islam part because that's the answer to the anti-West. At the mosque, she met a man who was already married, already had three children, but he took my mom on as his second wife. So in Islam, a man can have up to four wives. She became his second concurrent wife. The two of them together, hook, line, and sinker into this ideology. We have to spread Islam into the West. We have to spread Islam throughout America, Canada, like Europe. It has to get. Um, that's the only way to fix these societies is for them to all become Muslim. And also, that is the whole idea of the global caliphate. Everybody has to become Muslim or die. Those are your two options: become Muslim, convert, or be killed. And here we are. Like I'm like 5 or 6 years old at this point. So it was like a real shock. We're just living our lives like normal people, and then all of a sudden, boom! No more. You're not allowed to play with your non-Muslim friends anymore. You're not allowed to go swimming anymore. You're not allowed to ride a bike anymore. You're not allowed to listen to music anymore. You're not allowed to celebrate birthdays anymore. Like everything was forbidden, 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 forbidden. My mom started wearing like this ugly gray thing covering her hair. Her clothes started to become really drab and long. Me and my sister eventually got put into these clothes as well. We were forced to memorize the Quran and pray 5 times a day. And if we missed a prayer, we were beaten mercilessly.
Mm.
And, or if we didn't memorize to the degree that was required, we had a certain amount of ayahs that had to be memorized every single day. And if we didn't meet our quota, we were beaten.
Mm.
And it just like, it was like a bomb hit our home. Everything changed. And I hated this man. I hated what he had done to my mom. I hated how my life had completely changed. But I'm a child. What am I going to do? Right. So I was peeing on myself. I was sucking my thumb. I was, all of the things that are
Totally regress
very.
backward.
Yeah, yeah. All
Yeah.
of, it's so obvious that this kid is in, I turmoil. I had rashes showing up on my body. Eventually, I was put into Islamic schools. Like I mentioned, hijab was put on me, and then it just becomes like a tsunami. You almost fracture yourself into two beings. There's like a little fire inside of you that is still upset and sad, resentful, and hopeful that you might come out of this, but that part of you can't speak up. It can't be strong. It can't be loud because it's dangerous. It's dangerous for me here on earth, and it's dangerous in the afterlife because I can go to hell for eternity. You kind of develop this persona that allows you to survive in this traumatic situation. And that little part of me that was inside of me, every now and then she'd ask a question or she'd push or she'd, defy something. And that was really, really, really unacceptable. Like I got in so much trouble. I'll give you one small story. I one time wrote my name as Jasmine with a J instead of Yasmin with a Y. And from that, I wrote it on a notebook and they saw the notebook. And from that, they felt this girl is becoming too Western. She wants to spell her name in the Western way instead of in the Arabic way. And so they felt like they needed to really make me understand that what I had done was incredibly wrong. They needed to punish me. And so the punishment for changing one letter in my name was to be hung upside down in the garage and whipped until I passed out. So this is
Mm.
just to give you an example of when I say when I did
Yeah.
little things, that little fire inside of me, if it just came forward the tiniest bit, it was really pushed back. So, I wanted my mom's love. I wanted her to appreciate me. I wanted her to not hate me. And so I did everything that she wanted. I did all of the prayers because my mom at this point has become like a scholar of Islamic studies at the Al Azhar University in Egypt, which is like the most prestigious Islamic university. She's the head of the Islamic Studies department at the Islamic school. Like when I say hook, line, and sinker, I mean it. She became such a zealot. And as her children, we needed to be, in order to uphold the honor of the family, we needed to be straight A students when it came to Islamic studies because it was going to be in her face. So that's what I did. When I was talking about the trajectory of my mom's life following that of the Middle East, when she grew up, you would never see hijab except for like in the villages with, older folks, uneducated folks. But anywhere in the city, she's from Cairo, anywhere in the city, any educated class, you wouldn't, nobody's wearing hijab, nobody's religious. It was like a joke. You could see in Gamal Abdel Nasser, with one of the presidents of Egypt in the 1950s, mid 50s, he was talking to parliament, and he said to them, the Muslim Brotherhood want me to enforce Islam on, or sorry, to enforce hijab on all of the women in Egypt. And then he starts laughing, and all the men in parliament start laughing. Just the joke of it, the joke that you're going to get Egyptian women to wear hijab. And of course, look at Egypt today, right? Like 98% of women are in hijab. So that, as my mom was becoming more and more radicalized, you could see it all over the Middle East: Iran, Libya, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, Afghanistan, the whole region, Middle East, North Africa, was just, all of it was becoming more and more and more radicalized. And the pictures are still there. Like, this is like, people show us, like, I can show you pictures of my mom. People are showing pictures of their moms and their aunts. And Saudi Arabia had like fashion designers, and now everybody's in black. Like, it's a completely different world. Afghanistan, women were going to universities, and now little girls can't even go to school. It was just, getting worse and worse all across the Middle East, North Africa, and in my house as well. So everything just kind of kept going and going, getting worse and worse and worse and worse, until I was 19 and I was forced into a marriage with a terrorist, an Al-Qaeda terrorist. And my mom said she finally found a man who was strong enough to control me, because I was too much of a handful, because I wanted to have non-Muslim friends, like that was one of my biggest faults. And also, when I was 12 years old, I told on the man that she had married. I didn't tell on my mom because I didn't want to lose, I already didn't have my dad. So I was like, I don't want to tell on my mom because I don't want to lose her, but I'm willing to tell on this man that she married. And so I told my teacher, Mr. Fabro. He in fact wrote the foreword of my book, Unveiled. So there was a year when I was able to go to public school because the Islamic school did not have a high school yet. I told Mr. Fabro about the abuse that was happening in the house. I showed him the welts, I showed him the bruises, I showed him the cuts. And then he alerted the police. The police alerted child services. Basically, it ended up going to family court, where the judge decided in the end, it's your culture. This is the way your family chooses to discipline you. Deal with it.
Talk about being stuck after actually trying to break that cycle. Wow.
Exactly.
Not feeling in control throughout and then trying to be in control and being pushed back. No, no, back to your culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can just imagine the glee of my mom and that man she married now, because on top of the abuse, they can add humiliation, right? They can add psychological torture.
Yeah.
And they weren't worried anymore. They took
Get
me
away
out of
with it.
school.
Yeah.
They know they're going to get away. What are you going to do? You've already done the maximum. You tried to go to the non-Muslims for help. You tried to go to the police for help. What did you get? Nothing. So what are you going to do about it? So then it was like all bets are off. They weren't, before that, they would hit me at the bottom of my feet, being careful so that nobody would see, nobody would know. Now I'm home from school. They can do whatever they wanted to do because nobody's going to see anything. And so that was another example of why she felt like I was needed to be controlled, because I told on her. I told on that man she married, right? But as far as she was concerned, like, she was so offended and so angry and so upset and so hurt that I would do that. She said, "Are you trying to get me divorced? Are you trying to ruin my life?" So instead of caring about protecting her daughter, she's worried that now this is going to affect her relationship with this abuser. I did everything, like, as I was saying, I did everything to please her, everything to earn her love, everything to earn her just not hate. Just don't hate me would be good. Stop
Yeah.
actively hating me. And I wore the niqab, covered in black, black gloves, black socks, everything delivered from Saudi Arabia. I married the man she told me to marry. I put up with him beating me. I put up with him raping me. I put up with everything because she told me this is what Allah demands. She showed me in the Quran the ayah that said I have to let him beat me. She showed me in the ahadith where it says that I have to allow him to rape me. Everything was like, she cited all of her sources, you know? And it's like, if you defy any of these things, you will burn in hell for eternity because as my mother, she basically holds the gate, the key to heaven. So the hadith says heaven is at the feet of your mothers. So if your mother does not approve for you to go to heaven, they say you will never smell the air from heaven. Like you'll never go near it. And because I was a believing Muslim at that time, I truly believed that it was all in her hands. And for eternity, I would burn in hell if she did not allow me to go to heaven. So my abuser was the one who had to, like, I had to accept this abuse because otherwise I would be tortured for the rest of eternity. I did everything. I did everything, 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 everything that she wanted. And then I had my daughter. And when I had my daughter and I held her in my arms for the first time, and I realized how overcome with love I was for this little girl and how I would do anything in the world to protect her. And I realized my mom never felt that way about me. You know, my whole life I thought it was me. My whole life I thought I wasn't good enough. I wasn't. But in that moment, I realized it had nothing to do with me. My daughter didn't do anything. She was a couple of minutes old. And I already would do anything to protect her. And so I realized at that moment that there was nothing I could do to get my mom to love me because it was never about me. She just never felt this way about me. Then, soon after, him and my mom started to have this conversation about taking my daughter to Egypt to have FGM performed on her, to have people
Wow.
take a razor blade to my perfect little baby daughter and cut up her genitals. So you can just imagine, like, I would have been willing to take my daughter in my arms and jump out through the window before I let them hurt her. You know, like I was so panicked with trying to find a way to protect her from these people. Ultimately, that was the catalyst for me getting out of that relationship with him. And because her and him were like two peas in a pod. So I had to get away from him first because he's the more violent one. He's the one that had the physical ability to keep me in place. So if I got away from him, then my mom I was a bit easier to get away from. There's more psychological torture and stuff, but she couldn't physically attack me the way he did. And that's what I did. And then eventually I started got student loans, started going to university, took a history of religions course, and that's what allowed me, like, everything started unraveling intellectually. And then 9/11 happened. And then emotionally, I was bombarded in the same way because everybody in the community and in my family and all around me, the people are celebrating, people are jubilant, people are excited and happy to see all of this death and destruction. The joy that was going throughout the community was humiliating and vomit inducing. And that's what made me realize there's no way I'm raising my daughter in this community. There's no way. Like, at this point, she was just a toddler, and she didn't understand yet, but there was no way that I was going to allow her to be in a community of people who celebrated death like this. I got away from him thinking, I got away from it. Now I'm just like a, moderate Muslim. I was like, oh, I'm just, I'm not going to be I'm not a jihadi's wife like I was before, so, everything should be okay. No, it was not okay. It's the mindset is still there, even if people aren't actively terrorists like he is. And I didn't want to raise my daughter in that mindset. So intellectually, I'm being bombarded in this class. Emotionally, I'm being bombarded with what happened on 9/11. And so by the end of that, I just felt like that's it. We need to get away from all of this. And of course, that means taking your life into your own hands because the punishment for renouncing Islam is execution. You have 3 days to repent, and if you don't, you're to be executed. And this can be carried out by any believing Muslim. And so my mom, she didn't even know I wasn't Muslim yet. I had just taken off my hijab and she threatened to have me killed. People don't really understand how common honor violence and honor killings are in our community. They hear things like this and they think, oh, it's just hyperbole. But that's gotten women killed, like there's a very, I don't know if you've heard of the story of a young woman in the UK who went to the police on 5 different occasions telling them my father is trying to kill me, my father wants to kill me, and they never believed her until they found her body shoved in a suitcase and buried in her backyard. And they told the parents, they told the fam, like everybody, they said, oh yeah, she moved to Iraq, she's gone, like. And there were, like, over 50 people involved that knew about this, her cousins, her mother, her brother, her uncles, they all knew. No, nobody said a word to the police.
There was just an article in the Israeli newspaper about it, that there are a lot of cases in the Arab community in Israel with unresolved murder cases.
Yep.
Very, yeah.
And I'm
And we know about it. We know. So when she says, you're gonna be killed, it was not a threat I took lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm so moved by everything that you're saying. And I think about like trauma bonding and mind control and post traumatic stress. And I experienced intimate partner violence, which was hard enough to leave without honor killings, waiting for me also. So I'm super curious because it's interesting what you said about your daughter, because I left the person who was violent for the unborn child because I was not pregnant. I did not have a baby. I wanted one. And I thought, I can't bring her into or him into this world with what I'm going through. So, my question for you, hearing you, is how did you navigate trauma bonding, mind control, post traumatic stress? And it doesn't sound like you have support around you at that time.
No support whatsoever. I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't know any of these things.
Yeah.
All I knew was survival. That's it. It was pure fight or flight mode, survival, adrenaline. That's all I knew. I did not know where I was going, but I just knew what I was running away from. And I knew that you see that little piece of me that was inside, that little scared Yasmin that didn't want to speak up for herself. I always believed that one day I would be free. Somehow I just felt I would visualize it without knowing the word visualization, but that's how I would calm myself down, as I would like imagine living in a quiet house and da da da. When I had my daughter and they started talking about taking her to get FGM performed on her, I started to realize, like, not only am I never going to see freedom, but my daughter is going to have a worse life than I'd had. This man is talking about taking her to Peshawar and going and becoming a jihadi in Peshawar, and it's like the world that I thought was horrible in Canada, that's going to be a fairy tale compared to what my daughter is going to experience if I don't get her out of here. So the whole thing was just about, how do I get my daughter to freedom, out of just away from these people, and then I'll figure it out. And I'm grateful I lived in Canada, even though they screwed me over with when I was 12 years old. But um, I was able to get student loans, and I was able to go to university, and I was able to build my life up. And I never knew, like, I just always had short term plans, like short term goals. And so I did not navigate any of those things, Susie. And that's part of the problem is I didn't do any healing whatsoever. I was just so busy paying rent and getting food and, finishing this course and getting this degree and getting this job. And so it was, there was at no point for the longest time did I sit and do any kind of even understanding what I'd been through, let alone beginning the healing process until very recently.
I mean, you were just on survival mode. One of the things you mentioned before stayed with me about the story of your mom, of that personal grieveness, lost, the divorce, that take a huge turn into more general grieveness, and let's find a bigger cause where to put it under social. What I see now is a lot of people do that under social justice, for example, especially in college campuses, right? So you see a lot of students with their own grieveness, or being bullied in the past, or have a trauma, and it seems that they take a turn to place it on something else. From what you're seeing on college campuses, how does this radicalization come to term? Like, what do you see that's happening?
So you're absolutely correct. And behind me, I've got a book here called Radical, written by Majid Nawaz, who tells the story of himself exactly what you just described. He was on college campuses in the UK and he had a grievance because he was beaten up by some neo Nazis. He's Pakistani. He was beaten up by neo-Nazis, and so he started to find this thing of like he wanted to fight back. So similar to my mom, he got pulled into the anti-West Islamist ideology. His was Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is another one. There's so many of them. But it's all similar ideology, right? And just like my mom, he got into it because of the anti-West side of things, not because of the pro-Islam, but that's what it ended up becoming. He eventually ended up in prison in Egypt because he was trying to get nuclear arms to Pakistan. So the story of what you just described there happens on campuses so easily. It grows like a virus on campuses. And in fact, it's not even on campuses anymore. This starts in high school. There are Muslim student associations, which are funded by Qatar and Iran, right? These are all over every university you can think of. Any universities, big or small, across the Western world, they have Muslim student associations. Some of them are massive, like in Harvard, where that have like billions of dollars coming in, and smaller places have smaller Muslim student associations. High schools have these Muslim student associations too, because they don't even want to wait until they're 18. We have to make sure we get them when they're even younger and when their brains are even more fragile. And what they do is they basically fish for any child who is in any way feeling isolated, maybe they're bullied. We're talking children. We're talking 14, 15, 16, puberty. This is teenage angst time. Everybody's dealing with something. Every kid is going to be feeling in some way, you know, some sort of grievance. And they catch those kids and they sell them the story of the ideology. And in fact, Assam, the man that they made me marry, this is exactly his story too, but his is in Egypt. Morocco, Libya, Saudi Arabia, UAE, you name it, all over the world, Sweden, France, Belgium, across the planet, this is happening. They fish for any kids that are feeling in any way some sort of, like you mentioned, some sort of social justice grievance. Maybe they're angry about the whole Palestine Israel conflict. Maybe they're angry because there was this girl who wore hijab and somebody gave her a funny look. Maybe they're whatever it is, because they don't have halal food in their cafeteria. I don't know, whatever it is. At the time for Majid, it was the conflict that was happening in Bosnia, right? So it there's going to be something. There's always something. And they catch those kids that are full of this idealism and anger and nowhere to go with this anger, nowhere to point it, nowhere to direct it. And they say, "Here, come over here. Come join this brotherhood. Join this group. We are a community of supporters. We will take care of you. And in Egypt, they say, "Sim falasad." That means the poison in the honey. You think it feels like honey. It feels like this supportive, great group. Let's all get together. Let's talk about these problems. Let's have some, some discussions about this and some debates and some discourse, and let's figure these problems out together. Maybe we'll have some placards and maybe we'll go out and do some protesting. Like, yeah, that's how it starts, right? You feel like, yeah, I'm part of this movement. I'm making change. I'm doing so much good. And before you know it, you're supporting Hamas. Before you know it, you're screaming, "Burn Tel Aviv to the ground." Before you know it, you're saying the same anti Semitic chants that led us to the Holocaust. It's like a slow process, like a frog being boiled. I watched it happen to my mom. I've known countless people that this has happened to. I didn't know I saw him before when he was a child, but when he was 14, he was caught up in this because his father is an engineer and he grew up in a lower income part of Egypt. Egypt is very, very hierarchical when it comes to social class. So if you're from
Mhm.
a different social class, you dress differently, you sound differently, like your language is even different. And so when his father came into good money and they moved to a better neighborhood, he was ostracized because he didn't talk like them, he didn't act like them, he didn't dress like them, he didn't get the references that they got. And so he didn't fit in with the other boys. So when there were all these men telling him, if you join us, so forget these boys, if you join us, you're going to go to the highest levels of heaven. You're going to get
We'll
all these
protect you,
virtues.
we will help you. We see that in Parents for Peace a lot. So we have a lot of family in Parents for Peace. We work with trying to exit extremism and radicalized youth. And we see it happening all the time where exactly what you're talking about, Yasmin. They give them a cause, they give them a purpose, and then they're providing them the community, the connection. So to your point before, they're giving them the connection and the protection as well. And by the way, you mentioned high school. It starts from K to 12. I mean, in Massachusetts, we just had a hearing about combating anti Semitism, and they show how the Massachusetts Teacher Association have been using specific material. If you look at them, they're nothing but anti Semitic and have radicalization in them. And that's under teachers. This is the largest teacher union in Massachusetts. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's so painful. And hearing, I mean, I'm still blown away by your internal resilience because you didn't have the support, you didn't have the language, you knew you wanted to get out. So obviously there was like that fire just within you. And then I think, what for people who don't have that fire in them? So I teach at USC. So it's happening obviously on all college campuses. And doesn't matter if you're educated. They're sort of like, so that sense of belonging that you were
Yeah.
describing, I'm wondering if there's something that you think could help people on college campuses who are like, yeah, I'm all in. And it doesn't matter the facts or the propaganda. They just want to belong.
It is such a strong pull, Susie. It is such a strong pull. I mean, we are social animals, right? We are pack animals. We need that tribe community. And it is a very, very, very intoxicating pull. What we're talking about here, if we're being perfectly honest, and you know this as well as I do, we are talking about a cult. We are talking about a cult mentality and we are talking about indoctrination. We're essentially talking about mind control. And so it is very difficult. It is extremely difficult for anything external. In fact, when you come externally and try to convince them that what they're doing is wrong, they will they will like double down even more because they will feel threatened that you are trying to undermine this thing that is so important to them. It becomes a part of who they are, it becomes a part of their identity. To undermine it is to undermine them. To criticize it is to criticize them. And so they will protect it with their life. And as speaking as somebody who was indoctrinated myself, I can't imagine it being external, any kind of external pressure. So what happened with me, and one thing I didn't mention is I dedicated my book to my friend Tiffany. Tiffany was that non-Muslim friend that I could not let go of. She planted seeds in me very gently and with love. Those seeds, they're planted, right? They eventually germinate and they grow a little, and I hear something or I see something and then it just makes me think, and so spread the seeds of truth, spread the seeds of light. You don't know where it's going to reach, and you don't know when it's going to bear fruit, but it has to be an internal thing. The person has to get to a point where the cognitive dissonance is just like, you can't keep this going. You have to, something's got to break. For me, it was my daughter. For other people, it's different situations for every person, but there has to be that moment for you where you realize, I have been lied to. This is all a farce. And you can just imagine how humiliating that is to admit, how difficult it is to admit that you were that stupid, essentially. You feel so stupid for being pulled into this. And so you don't want to admit it. You don't want to accept it. You'd rather keep digging the hole deeper rather than accept like everything was a lie. I describe it, for me, it was like the Truman Show. Do you guys remember the Truman Show?
Yeah.
Yeah, that moment where he just realized, like, everything I've ever known from the moment I existed was a lie. Everything was manufactured. It is a incredibly traumatizing thing to go through. And
Yeah.
I have known people who actively choose to still stay within the cult because that reality is like too much for them to handle. So they're just like, it's okay. It's okay. I don't have to really believe, but I just want to stay. I want to stay in this comfort with the community and the tribe and the support system, because man, is it a supportive system. It is an incredibly supportive system. That was one of the hardest parts, actually, of leaving Islam for me, leaving that whole alt cult, the whole ideology, was when you're part of it, you are protected in every way, shape, and form. I
Mhm.
was coming out of a parking garage and I scraped the bumper of my car. No problem. We know a guy. He's going to fix it for you. You know what I mean? No insurance, no, everything is taken care of. Somebody in the bank, somebody, everywhere there's somebody. And so you're part of this huge network. You feel invincible, supported, protected. Like there's so much more to it. It's like if you try to convince them about the facts, logic, reality, it's not going to stack up against all of the pros that they get from being part of the cult.
I'm just thinking there's so many layers to that. I mean, you talked about a cognitive dissonance, which I can imagine this is huge, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the shame that comes with it. And I think a lot of people, when they're trying to help and get people out of the radicalization cycle, they end up making them feel worse about themselves, which is like you said, this is going to be worse, right? Like I mean, when I talk with parents, I really focus on connection and validation and what can you do. We work mostly with parents who their kids have been radicalized, and there is a dissonance also within the family piece, so how can we get them closer? But I'm thinking in today's environment, when you also have social media where everything is amplified, how do you find those seeds that you talked about, those grain of truth, where it feels like reality for everyone? I mean, we talked with a bunch of college students also in the previous season, and I talk with students that I see in my clinic, and they're saying, I need to be part of something to be accepted.
Yeah.
So you have that peer pressure, you have social media. How do you do, and how do you think it plays a role?
Oh, I absolutely think it plays a role. Yes, 100%. I mean, my daughter is only 16, but she's very interested in all of these things. And we often talk about these kinds of things. Yesterday, she said to me, I can't even remember, like it was so crazy, because what I want you to know is that she's an informed child. She's not on TikTok. I said something about, the hostages coming home or something. And then she said, and what about the hostages from Israel? I said, what are you talking about? I said, you think Israel would take innocent people hostage in their home? I said, only Hamas did that. She said, no, because I read something, they kept on talking about the hostage swap.
Mm.
I was like, my love, those are criminals. Those are rapists and murderers and terrorists that have been in prison, some of them for life, over the crimes that they've committed. Those are not hostages. But because she just saw hostage swap, hostage swap, hostage swap, genocide, 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 apartheid, apartheid, apartheid. The words, they just keep on getting repeated over and over and over. This is social media, right?
And
And
the
it's
news,
just,
not just
yeah,
social media, the
yeah,
news is yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it's just like they are also spreading their seeds, but their seeds are lies, 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 lies. And if
Right.
you don't pay attention, if you don't look at it deeper, and you're just kind of scrolling past and you see the word genocide 20 times in a day, somebody's going to ask you, is there a genocide going on? Yeah, of course there is. I'm aware of it. You haven't read about it. You don't understand it. Their propaganda has been in full swing. I wrote my book in 2019. I was talking about the propaganda being in full swing. When October 7th happened, it was like that. October 8th, they were out there screaming their anti Semitic chants. Israel didn't even have a chance to retaliate yet. Bodies were still warm, and they were already defending the killers. They were already posting pictures of paragliders as if they're heroes, right?
Yeah.
So you had to know that this propaganda machine was already in full swing way before October 7th. The Kindle was all set. October 7th was just the match. And it all erupted like this across the world. So when we're talking about pushing back now, we are so behind. And we don't have the Russia level, Arab level propaganda machine. We haven't been doing that. Look at the difference. Israel's been doing what? They're like, well, we're building technologies, we're advancing in medicine and in science. And, that's what they were busy doing. They weren't busy involved in propaganda in universities across the world and schools and high schools across the world, but they were. They were. And so now when we come and we're trying to show the other side of the story, the truth, we're trying to pull back the curtain, we're trying to dismantle the propaganda, we're late to the game. So it's a lot of hard work. I mean, you're talking about the schools in Minnesota. In Canada, we've got anti-Palestinian racism is something that has been now in the curriculum of our schools, something that is being taught. Anti-Palestinian racism is teaching that if you dare to say that this land is indigenous to anyone but Palestinians, then you are an anti-Palestinian racist.
Oh, I was called that here in Massachusetts because I dare to say that part of my identity as a Zionist is that we have the right to, for Israel to exist. And me, and so it's so interesting. So that hearing, that's when they pulled that this is racism, basically.
Yeah. This is racism. And then, all of the stuff that can come with that, right? That's hate speech. You could be investigated at your work. It's going to cause you problems, right? We have a big job ahead of us. But honestly, I have to sometimes take a step back because the social media is a double-edged sword. It is very toxic, but at the same time, it is our only way to get our voice out there. Because when you have places like New York Times and all these major BBC, CNN, their headlines are grotesque in how incredibly biased they are. So we have to use social media to get our voices out there. We don't really have that kind of power. I mean, they say Jews control the media, so come on, guys, like, control it a little better.
Failed, I guess.
So we have to be on social media. We have to do it, but it is a toxic place to be. But sometimes it's good to take a step back and look at what's going on out there. Because just today I was looking at research of what's going on in Canada about all this whole Hamas, Palestine, Israel issue and everything. And the numbers are actually really heartening. It makes me realize that, okay, people are not as stupid as I thought they were because Canada's like left of left, like Bernie Sanders is a right wing as far as Canadians are concerned, right? Yeah. So, so it gets very frustrating sometimes. I'm like, what the hell is going on? But people are not that dumb. And to be honest with you, having this topic in the news for the past year and a half has made people look into it more than they would have if it wasn't so constantly in the news every day. People are starting to understand more, they're starting to learn more, they're starting to get it more. And you know what? We're human beings. If you say this group of people murdered babies, raped women, kidnapped women and men and elderly, but they're also victims. And your heart has to go out towards these victims because they are the beleaguered, oppressed group. People are not buying that. It's not an easy sell. It's not an easy sell, you know? Even if they're doing this on social media because they don't want to be attacked by their peers, it's not an easy sell. People are not that stupid. They can see what's going on. My heart breaks for the father, his wife and his kids.
Yarden, Yarden Vivas.
Yeah. And the Beavis babies, they're not home yet. Everybody
Yeah.
knows like the worst is probably like they should have been first on the list, you know?
Yeah.
And for them to make him say, I cannot wait to go see my wife and my children. I'm not sure if it was him or if it was another man, like,
Oh,
and
they
they
did it with a
laugh.
few of them. Yeah, they did it with the one that actually they murdered his wife and daughter on the 7th.
Yeah.
So we're recording it 500 days after October 7th. There's still
Yeah.
over 70 people held
Yeah.
hostage.
So people see this is what I'm saying. Like it's not like it's the propaganda can only go so far, you know? The lies can only go so far. Maybe I'm an eternal, hopeless optimist, but I always do believe that the truth just always rises to the top eventually. Sometimes it can take too long, but it does rise to the top eventually. And I feel like there is a shift happening. I feel like the shift is moving in the direction of rational, logical progress.
You give me so much hope. Like, I feel like I'm breathing deeper. And I've been reading that they're the loudest, but they're actually on the fringe. And so
Yeah.
it feels like it's the world. And as you said, people are not that stupid. And that there is that small percentage on the fringe that are loud. And the propaganda machine, since your book was like way before October 7th, obviously has been going and going. Before we ask our last question, what advice would you give to students who feel isolated or pressured by the radical groups on campus?
So when I said people are not that stupid, I meant that. But the other side to that is people are also not that courageous. So when you have these folks on campus that are feeling isolated, they need to push themselves to be a little bit more courageous. What they need to know in their heart of hearts, there's been so much anti Semitic hate and violence. Like in Canada, we've had schools being shot, we've had synagogues being shot down, we've had, in New York, the stories are endless, random kids being beaten up. Like so much of that has been going on. And that causes people to bite their tongue because terrorism works. I mean, the Muslims have proved that for so long. This is why you don't have anybody, this is why the word Islamophobia exists, right? It's there to shut down conversation, shut down criticism so that the one narrative can be heard. We're seeing the same thing here. Through these acts of terrorism, it's forcing people to stay quiet even if you are feeling like, in Australia, they had a doctor and a nurse were on camera talking about killing, they have killed countless Israeli people. We've killed countless Jewish people in our hospital. You have to know at some point that when you speak up against these kinds of acts, you're going to feel nervous. You're going to feel scared. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, people are going to attack me. They're going to say all sorts of things. They're going to call me a racist and a bigot and a Islamophobe and whatever. But if you're courageous enough to speak up, you will find that there are dozens behind you that support you, but they just didn't have the courage to speak up, you know? Because what happened with those two hospital workers is there was a woman in that worked for the exact same hospital as them, and she was speaking up against this anti-Semitism like a year ago. When she started to speak up against it, she was attacked for it and they investigated her and they put something on her file and da 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 because they said that she is being Islamophobic or whatever. So it's like we have reached, I feel, a critical point where we are past the danger zone. And I can't even call it the danger zone because I work in my organization, Free Hearts, Free Minds. We're working with, like, I've worked with people that were Hamas. I've worked with people who were Al Qaeda. We're working with people who are imprisoned in Iran. You know what I mean? So when I talk about the danger zone here in the free West, we have to keep that like it's a spectrum of the danger zone. Like you're gonna be okay. There's no IRGC that's going to grab you, throw you in a van, and put you in prison. Nobody's going to kill you in the night. You know, in South Africa, a gay imam was just murdered. In Sweden, an Iraqi man was killed in his home because he burned the Quran. These kinds of things, like it's just it's a scary, scary world out there. But counter that with we just had no hijab day on February 1st. So there is something called World Hijab Day, and we countered it with No Hijab Day, which is a day to separate to celebrate women and to support women who push back against the hijab. I got a letter from a woman in London who works for an organization that has like 150, less than 150 people. One of those people is Muslim. And they were announcing the things that they're going to be celebrating in February and March of this year. Three out of the four things were Islamic related. Was World Hijab Day, Ramadan, Eid, and then International Women's Day. So because she was seeing all my No Hijab Day posts, she felt confident that I'm going to write a letter to HR. So this is what I mean with the courage, right? She didn't go and burn a Quran. She didn't go and do anything like that was maybe going to be considered aggressive or considered disrespectful or whatever. She wrote a letter to HR clearly outlining why she felt celebrating Hijab Day was anti woman, misogynist, and toxic. She talked about the women in Iran being imprisoned. She talked about the women in the UK being killed. She talked about everything. And then she wrote me an email and she said, "Oh my God, I did this and you inspired me. And now I'm petrified." And then she wrote back to me the next day and said that HR had responded to her and said, "We hear what you're saying. We appreciate everything you've said. And in fact, we want you to do a presentation on International Women's Day where you talk to us about the toxicity of the hijab."
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
So be that person, be that light, be that one that stands up, speaks up against these things that you're seeing around you. You know you have the truth on your side. You know you have so much evidence on your side, right?
Mhm.
Just be brave, be confident, and speak up. And you'll find that there are many, many other people behind you that just weren't as brave as you.
Yasmine, I mean, I could speak with you for hours. I love your heartbeat, as Susie often say, which I totally stole your line, Susie. But I think what I really appreciate is not only how you used your journey and, for listeners who've been listening for a while, I'm a big person about post-traumatic growth and not just bouncing back and being resilient, but making meaning out of it. And between your amazing organization, which we're going to put the links, please look into that, and also read the book Unveiled, which is a must read for anybody. I just appreciate how you gave meaning to everything and you keep giving meaning to other people. You're being their light when they cannot find the light, and you help them find the courage when they don't feel like they have the courage to do that. So thank you for doing that. And our last question, um, what would you like to share your story with us today?
Oh, this has been beautiful. I mean, Susie, I felt you when you said that you feel like you can breathe lighter. I mean, this is that's what these conversations are so meaningful and so important and so valuable. Yesterday on my podcast, I spoke to a Palestinian mother who lost her baby, and she now works with a parents group, which I think is similar to the one that you mentioned, Miri, where she has met Israeli mothers who've also lost their children, and together they work, towards reconciliation and towards a world of, a peaceful world for their children. These are the stories of hope. These are the stories of resilience. These are the stories of love and peace and progress. This is what we need to be hearing. Instead, we're hearing the two extremes on the two ends. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of Arabs that think like I do. There really are. But it is dangerous for them to speak out. When we talk about it's dangerous for people on campuses to admit that they are Zionists in the freest country in the world,
True.
imagine being an Arab Zionist, right? In Egypt or in the West Bank, or in Saudi Arabia or in the UAE. Like, they exist, but it is dangerous for you to be very vocal. And so that's why this work is really, really important, because it allows these people a place, like they can hear voices that they can empathize with, and that resonate with them, and they can feel seen and heard, because they're not getting that in their own communities. And then the more that we encourage them to be courageous, and we encourage, each other to be courageous, the more we are spreading that ripple effect throughout the world. And honestly, even in the Arab world, October 7th was a huge, huge turning point. Like, the influx of people from Palestine that have been writing to us at Free Hearts, Free Minds, unbelievable. We've never had so many Palestinians, whether it's the West Bank or Gaza, we've never had so many of them come to our organization before. And same thing happened when ISIS took hold in Iraq and Syria. When people see the reality, it's not just like rhetoric anymore. Now it's like, no, you're actually killing Jews. Like, we learned about this in school, kill the Jews. They taught us to stab Jews, but now you're actually doing it. It's different. It's different.
Yes.
And it pushes them, just like 9/11 pushed me out. All of these terrorist things, they push people out. It breaks the cognitive dissonance, and it
Mhm.
and it forces people out of this lull of the indoctrination that they've been in. So, yeah, I do want to sort of end this with that kind of hope for you, that people are exhausted in the Arab world. They are sick and tired of this whole Palestinian conflict. And you can see that. I mean, in the past, they had Arab coalitions. Egypt was joining in, and Jordan, and, everybody was like, oh, let's team up against Israel. Nobody's doing that. In fact, you find the opposite. When Iran was bombing Israel, what was Jordan and Saudi Arabia? What were they doing? Protecting Israel. That's the truth. That's the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is Egypt will sit down and shut up and won't open their mouth. And same thing with all the rest of them. Nobody is going to jumping to the side of the Palestinians to protect them or fight with them. Nobody's messing with Israel, because they understand, if we want peace and prosperity and progress for our people, then we need to do the rational thing. Everybody's tired of it. First and foremost, the people of Gaza are tired of it. They're sick and tired of being used as fodder, as pawns in this political game, right? Their bodies, their lives are just chess pieces. And the same for Israelis. The same for Israelis, right? They're also, their bodies and their families and their children are all being used as chess pieces in these power plays, you know? So everybody's exhausted. Everybody is sick and tired of it. You're just not hearing it as much from the Arab world because of how dangerous it is. But trust me when I tell you, and you will hear some of those voices on my podcast, because some people are brave enough to come forward with not without risk. I mean, this woman that I was speaking to, she lives in Bethlehem, and she tells me on the podcast about what a risk it's been to her and her family for her to just speak about peace. There's a lot of people that speak the way we speak, that feel the way we feel, but we're just not hearing their voices. And I want you both to know that, and anybody listening to this to really know that in their heart. Like, the truth will eventually set us all free.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. You give me so much hope. And I am going to be more courageous in classes because I haven't been as courageous until now. I'm like, oh no, if you could do it, I'm going to step in and I love your heart. I love your heartbeat. Thank you so much for bringing so much light.
My absolute pleasure, Susie. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you both. I try to be the best ally that I could possibly be in such a dark time. And so I'm grateful for you to allow me the opportunity to express, my allyship and my gratitude to you both.
We'd like to thank our listeners, Israeli music composer Jonathan Bargiora, editor Ian Phillips, podcast advisor Donna Fazari, and special thanks to the Academic Engagement Network for their generous support. Today's episode is co-produced by Associate Professor Susie Hess and Dr. Miri Bar-Halprin.
Our Stories Matter Courage on Campus is brought to you by Trauma Informed LA. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram and our website at traumainformedla.org. Please give us 5 stars on iTunes so more folks can have access and donate to traumainformedla.org so we can keep recording and healing through our storytelling episodes.